This advice is for beginner producers all the way into advanced or even professional producers. This is 10 ways that you can become a better music producer right now just by following this advice. Number 1, stop listening to people on the internet. Oh, wait a sec. Except for me, obviously. Seriously, there is so much bad information online with so many producers that don't really know exactly what they're talking about. And there's a lot of producers who do know what they're talking about, but they do things a very specific way that might not pertain to your style, your genre, your DAW, or your workflow. And even though they may think they're right, and maybe it works for them, it might not work for you. So take everything you read online with a grain of salt and just do your own research. Go Google and cross-reference and make sure that what you're learning is actually the right way to do things. You can also try it out yourself to see if it helps, but as a beginner, sometimes you just don't know if it's actually helping or if it's creating more problems. Number 2 is going to be experimenting. Some of the best sounds that I've heard, some of the best presets that I've discovered, or some of the best songs that I've written has been completely due to just experimenting and going outside of my comfort zone, trying something that I might not have tried just based on my own interpretation or my own imagination. You could be cycling through different presets on a melody that you've just created and hear a sound that you never would have thought personally to put into your track, but by discovering that preset or that sample or that sound by experimentation, then you have discovered this new sound that you couldn't have come up with on your own. If you see a tool you've never used before or a synth you've never opened, try it. Try opening it up, seeing what's inside. If you've never just grabbed a knob and twisted it all the way to one side, instead of just going to the exact same settings you use every time, try pushing those settings a little bit further, compress heavier, compress lighter. All these are really easy things that you can experiment with while you're writing or mixing your tracks. Number 3 is going to be setting time. Number 3 is going to be focusing on your weak points. So when I learned to produce, I was always focused on the technical side of things. I thought that the better producer I was technically, I would know how to write better music. I was good at the technical aspect of music, but I wasn't good at the actual writing. And I had to spend a lot of time with certain things like sound design and music theory that I should have known earlier on, and it really hindered my ability to get tracks signed and for DJs to start playing out my music. Once I took some time to really hone in on the weak points of my music, I started noticing a huge jump in my production quality. So focus on your weak points and work on those first so you can bring them up to speed, and your overall production game should get better very quickly. Shameless plug here, I do offer music production coaching, so if you're unsure what you want to improve on, or if you're struggling to improve, click this card right up here to learn about my music production coaching. Oh my gosh, I just sounded so Canadian there. Coaching, or you can check the description below where there's links to the coaching as well as music production courses for beginners and advanced producers. And shameless plug. Number 4 is don't just practice, learn at the same time. So of course, with anything, the more you practice, the better you become. But if you're spending so much time on things that you think are sounding good, you're not actually paying attention to the learning aspect of making them better. In other words, as you're writing, you're kind of just reaching for the same tools, you're using the same sounds, you're using the same techniques because they might be working for you right now, but maybe they're not the best techniques for you to be using on those sounds. So take some time and try to learn how to make those sounds even better by using different tools, different approaches, and really try to push the limits on the quality of whatever you're doing, whether it's songwriting, mixing, sound design. Always try to push yourself just a little bit further and really learn more about what you're doing pretty much every time you're doing it as you're learning. Number 5 is wasting less time on trial and error. A little contradicting to what I said about experimentation, but the difference is when you're just wasting time with trial and error, it's because you don't really know what you're doing. So of course I want you to try and experiment more by trying new synths, trying new tools, trying knobs that you don't know what they do, but it'll actually be better for you to learn a little bit about what you're experimenting with before going in and just raw dogging it like the feisty producer that you are. Take a few minutes, learn about what you're trying to accomplish before even experimenting. If you want to start using saturation and you've never used it before, instead of just going and throwing it on and cranking the knob, take 5 or 10 minutes to actually learn what a saturator does, what it's used for, and how you can use it in your track, and then start experimenting, knowing what you're kind of trying to achieve with that tool. Number 6 is going to be stop repeating the same mistakes over and and over. And I'm so guilty. Why do I keep sounding so Canadian? And I'm so guilty of doing this. I used to throw a compressor on every track and compress every sound individually because I read somewhere that you were supposed to compress everything. Before that, I was putting limiters on everything until I read that limiters were bad. Spoiler alert, you're not supposed to do that. The biggest problem with this is that a lot of the time we don't know we're making those mistakes. So it's really important that we take time to really think about the decisions we're making with our music and always checking before and after if what we're doing actually makes the sound feel or sound better or worse, or if it doesn't do anything at all. As beginner producers, sometimes it's hard to hear if what you're doing actually makes something sound better or worse. I understand that it's not easier said than done, but get into the habit of always A/B testing your sounds, which just means testing before and after you apply whatever you're applying, whether it's compression or equalization, or just making changes to the actual sound or songwriting. Get into the habit of doing this early so you avoid making these mistakes as often. Number 7, try to have some collaboration. I've learned so much from working with other producers, things that I never would have done on my own, but just by looking at their projects, it's a great way of opening up the ideas that you might not have thought of on your own. I have learned a lot of things from other producers that I wouldn't have learned just based off my own research or experimentation. Simple and complex things that I've learned from other producers I might not have ever discovered without working with them, even just for a short time. Number 8, don't rely solely on yourself. This is a really big one because a lot of people spend a lot of time learning how to produce music. It can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years to get to an actual production level that is considered the industry standard or professional. It took me a long time because I was only ever using Google and YouTube to learn everything when there wasn't as much information as there is now. I didn't really have friends in the music industry. I didn't know any other producers. I wasn't in any forums to ask questions. I learned everything by myself and with Google, but it was very time consuming. I do suggest working with other producers that are more knowledgeable than you, that are willing to teach you. Mentorship, coaching, and music production courses are a great way to drastically reduce the time it takes to become a successful producer. Number 9 is going to be following the rules and breaking the rules. Oh my gosh, Dowden's so edgy. I know. What I mean by this is following rules like filtering out unnecessary low information or sidechain compressing your bass instrument with your kick, things that are tried and true, things that make your song sound better every time that you can always kind of rely on. But also don't always form your track to those standards. I'm sure you've heard many producers say that there are no rules with music production, and the reason for that is because, well, they're right. There is no technical rules. There's just guidelines that we can follow that help kind of guide us in the right direction. But I don't think that you should solely rely on those guidelines and follow those rules every time. Push the boundaries a little bit, break some rules, try different things that you normally wouldn't try and see if it sounds better. If it sounds good, then it might be better to leave it in. Just remember this: no one's gonna see the settings of your track. They're only gonna hear what that track sounds like. They only care about the final product and what they're hearing. If it sounds good, then it probably is the better choice, despite the rules that say otherwise. Quick bonus tip before we get to number 10, super cliche, but remember to enjoy the journey and be patient. It's going to take some time to get to a place with your music production that you are happy with it. So instead of stressing about the final goal, just remember to have fun along the way. It honestly will save you a ton of stress. And the more fun you're having, the more you're gonna want to continue writing music and the less chance you are to give up along the way. It's not easy, but it's so rewarding once you get to a point where you're happy with your music. Number 10, and I'm probably gonna get some flack for this, is don't trust your ears all the time. Essentially what that means is use visuals as well as using your ears, because sometimes our ears can trick us. I have a full video breakdown of that right here, so check that out because it's very important to know. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video.